Chapter 11. Interrupting each other, the kids told Officer Fallon about the Bents. Even before Officer Fallon heard about the Happy Heart dog food boxes, he was shouting orders into his telephone. "Don't go back to Fox Lane," were his last words before he leaped for the door and disappeared. "Now what?" Dink asked. "Why should we be left out?" Ruth Rose asked. "Let's go watch." "Go where?" Josh asked. "He said to stay away." "Not Fox Lane," Dink interrupted. "The action is going to be on Squaw Island." Minutes later, they were catching their breath next to Officer Fallon's cruiser on River Road. The fog had lifted, and they had a better view of Squaw Island. Dink peered across the river, but saw only sand and rocks. Out of breath, Josh sank to the ground. "I think I'm having a heart attack," he moaned. "Do you think Officer Fallon is out there?" Ruth Rose asked, squinting. "I don't see anyone." The kids sat in the shade of the cruiser and watched the island. Suddenly, Josh jumped to his feet. "There they are!" he shouted. Three figures had come around the island's other side. It was too far away to tell who they were, but Dink thought he could see Officer Fallon's dark uniform. Then a fourth person came into view. He was pulling a small, flat-bottomed boat behind him. "It's Officer Fallon and Officer Keene," Dink said. "They've got the Bents." The kids watched the group come closer. The water was nearly up to Officer Fallon's knees. He led the Bents, who were handcuffed. Officer Keene waited, pulling the boat. It was green. "Look what's in the boat," Josh said. "It's piled with money and dog food boxes." Nobody spoke as Officer Fallon led the two counterfeiters to shore. The Bents were wearing their long wading boots. Their faces were angry as they stumbled up the riverbank. Officer Keene pulled the boat ashore and loaded the counterfeit money into the trunk of the cruiser. Officer Fallon opened the rear door for the Bents, then locked it once they were inside. "Good job," he said to the kids. He looked at Josh. "Are your folks home?" "I don't know," Josh answered. "Meet me at your house in an hour," Officer Fallon said. Then he and Officer Keene hitched up their wet pants and climbed into the cruiser. The car sped away, leaving the air filled with dust and pine needles. "Why does Officer Fallon want to talk to your mom and dad?" Dink said, grinning. "Are you in trouble?" "Gee, I wonder what jail food is like," Ruth Rose said. Dink patted Josh's belly. "I heard they feed the prisoners worm waffles for breakfast." "Tee, Josh said. "You guys are so funny. He probably wants to give me a reward for catching the Bents." "You didn't catch them," Ruth Rose said. "The three of us did." "But we all know I'm the brains in this group," Josh said, smiling. They cut through a field to get to Josh's house. Josh yanked open the back door and yelled, "Anybody home?" No one answered. "Let's eat," Josh said. "I'll make some sandwiches." They sat in Josh's backyard with jelly sandwiches, paper cups, and a container of milk. "I wonder where the Bents made the money," Dink said. "Do you suppose they have a printing machine in that house?" Josh put his sandwich down. "What would it be like to make money whenever you want it?" Dink heard a car roll into Josh's driveway. A door slammed and Officer Fallon came around the house. "Can you spare some of that milk?" he asked Josh. "Sure." Josh filled a cup and handed it to Officer Fallon. He took a long sip, then looked at the kids. "The Bents are locked up, but they're not talking. When they do, I expect we'll find out that they were just the middle guys. Whoever is printing all those hundreds is still out there somewhere." "But why did the Bents hide the money on Squaw Island?" Josh asked. "Easy to get to," Officer Fallon said. "With their boat at the bait shop, they could get to the island in a few minutes." "At first, we thought they might be partners with Mr. Pinkowski," Dink said. Officer Fallon nodded. "I can see why you thought so. I talked to Ron. He kept their boat in his yard. Then after Bent saw you kids on the island, he asked Ron to paint it. I guess he was afraid you would recognize it if you ever saw it again. Why did Mr. Pinkowski buy the calamine lotion? Josh asked. Ron's a nice guy, Officer Fallon said. I guess he noticed Bent was itching, so he bought him the lotion as a favor. Officer Fallon glanced at Josh's barn. Keep any animals in there? He asked Josh. No, Josh said. The twins and I want a pony, but Dad says they're too much work. How about a dog? Officer Fallon said. I just happen to have a nice, friendly basset hound who needs a good home. Josh's eyes lit up. Really? Officer Fallon smiled. Maybe you two should get to know each other. He whistled. Around the corner jogged Officer Keene, leading a short legged dog with droopy ears. It's Shorty, Ruth Rose said. You kids already know this pooch? Officer Fallon said. He was at the Bent's house, Dink explained. He almost gave away our hiding place. Officer Fallon stroked the dog's velvety ears. Well, his owners are going to prison for a long time. He needs a new home. Josh kneeled down and patted the dog's silky coat. Hey, doggy, he said, you want to live here? The dog gave Josh a lick with his long pink tongue, then plopped to the ground and rolled over. He likes me, Josh said. I was counting on it, Officer Fallon said. He dropped the leash into Josh's hand and headed for his car. Have your folks call me, he said as he left. Thanks, Officer Fallon, Josh called. What should we name him? Josh asked after a minute. He already has a name, Ruth Rose reminded Josh. Shorty. Josh shook his head. That's a terrible name. If you were short, would you want to be called Shorty? Josh is right, Dink said. We can come up with a better name than that. But when Josh's parents came home an hour later, the kids still hadn't picked a name. When Josh finally got permission to keep the dog, he still had no name. Later that night, Dink, Josh, and Ruth Rose drifted off to sleep in their bedrooms. The short legged dog with droopy ears snored at the end of Josh's bed, but he still had no name. And that is the end of the story. So, the Bents were the counterfeiters and they were put in jail. So, if you liked this mystery, A to Z Mysteries has a whole series of these stories, and you'll see the same characters, those same kids are in them solving mysteries. So, that might be something that you could do over your spring break. Okay, guys, hope you liked the story. Bye.